Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 259, Empowering Future Generations. For as long as I have been working in learning and development, both as an in-house trainer and facilitator, and then as a consultant, my work has been about empowering people. In the early years of that, as we speak, 38-year-long vocation, for that's how I see it, it was natural that I was often enabling those older than me to be the best version of themselves. As you might imagine, I was sometimes met with derision from the old crusties who attended my courses because they'd been there, done that, and got the t-shirt before I was even out of nappies. The undercurrent of their attitude was, "What do you have to teach me?" But as I frequently say, we are work in progress and never the finished article, so we always have more we can learn. The longer I have devoted to my vocation, the more I am working with those younger than me, and these days often those straight from school or university. They look at me with a different kind of curiosity, more along the lines of, what do you understand about the challenges of being young in the pressure of today's business environment? So I'm living an interesting role reversal process in some ways. I am now the crusty. So in this episode, I will be sharing the importance of empowering future generations because they are the leaders, the decision makers and the power brokers of times to come. As you might imagine, I feel particularly strongly about empowering younger introverts so that they know in their hearts and their souls, actually at a visceral level, that they are not broken or in need of fixing. For me, it's important that they recognise their natural qualities as introverts so they can own and play to their strengths unapologetically. Why? Because it is this that will enable them to reach more of their potential, because only they can decide if they will reach their full potential. The more they are able to do that, the more likely they are to live a fulfilled life, a life in which they are confidently flourishing. And it's never too early to build the great foundations for a child's confidence and self-esteem. I have always loved the saying, "Give me a child until he is 7 and I will show you the man." This phrase has been attributed to many, including St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, and some say Aristotle. It actually doesn't matter to me who the originator was, as it's the sentiment and the concept that matters. I remember the impact this notion had on me and my fellow students when I was studying child psychology back in the 1980s. It brought into sharp focus a previously overlooked or at least insufficiently considered aspect of the responsibilities of parenthood. And I have to say, some of the parents I was studying with were really freaked out. In some of the random introvert groups I'm part of, people will claim that it's their upbringing and the lack of nourishing parenting they received that made them an introvert. I'm saddened that some children are not nurtured or well cared for, and their tender souls were wounded as a result. I can also imagine how that would have probably caused some of them to behave in more introverted ways. And 'twas ever thus. This is not a new phenomenon, because I remember being at junior school with some children who had really tough upbringings. I see two things that are different from when I was a child. Firstly, we're more aware of the bad cases because of the media reporting and social media. Secondly, many of us don't even know our neighbours' names, let alone consider them part of our support network. As introverted parents, we would benefit from intentionally having people we can call on for help. But that does mean getting out of our own way and not thinking of other people as the enemy to be avoided at all costs. And the way our world is going right now, I see no evidence to suggest that many of the world's children will have a better upbringing anytime soon. This is especially true when parents struggle to ask for help, a common introvert problem, when it's all too easy and convenient to keep those young minds occupied with a smart device too much of the time. So those of us on the periphery of their care, as teachers, relatives, and concerned third parties, have a role to play, I believe. The one thing we can do when we notice the opportunity is provide behavioural tools for our young people to use so that they may develop stronger foundations of self-worth. None of us can solve the whole problem, but all of us can do a little. And never underestimate the power of a moment of kindness and the gift of a memory that leaves with a young soul. It's partly for this reason that I recently published my book, Quiet is Fun Too, and why I'll be producing more resources for all age groups. One thing at a time, though, so please watch this space for more announcements. So we can all do a little. But where do we start? I focused my thinking down to 3 key points that I think worth sharing. Number 1, breaking the stigma. Of course, the stigma that I'm talking about is what it means to be an introvert. The ill-informed will still think that we'll be handicapped in some way unless we push ourselves forward in life. Now, sadly, there is an element of truth in that, but it's how we enable introverts to claim their space at the table that matters. We can all be mindful of the emerging nature of even the youngest children in our midst. That means if one of the children is quieter by nature, please don't automatically assume that there is something wrong with them. Teachers, please don't assume that quieter children aren't sufficiently socialised. And parents, don't force children to perform, to put on a song and dance to show off their talents, or kiss strangers and ancient relatives. These can all create little moments of trauma, and as a trauma-informed coach, I now understand that for trauma to exist and need dealing with, it doesn't need to have been death, extreme violence, or a war situation. The challenging thing, of course, is what causes real trauma for one person may not for another, so we cannot compare or judge. Taking time to understand what each young person needs in order to feel good about themselves is such an important step, and one we should never be too busy to take. So it's okay, in fact I'd say imperative, that we encourage those quieter children to really enjoy their quiet time without guilt, and know that it's just how their bodies and minds recharge, and that doesn't make them wrong, just different from some other children. And different is beautiful. We are all unique after all. How wonderful would it be if every human being could own their uniqueness? Number 2, providing resources for growth. And I'll add to that, creating the environment for growth. We have long known about the benefits of having a growth mindset, thanks to Carol Dweck and her seminal book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. The key premise is that a growth mindset is one where someone's abilities, intelligence and talents can be developed through effort, learning and persistence. Fortunately, humans are hardwired for growth and development, so in the right environment, growth is our natural state. But you can imagine how when we are constantly told off for getting things wrong or making mistakes as you're learning, a young person is likely to lose that natural predisposition for learning and choose instead to play safe. The key principles of a growth mindset are: effort leads to improvement, failures are opportunities, the brain has plasticity, and actionable feedback works better than criticism. So simple things that parents, caregivers and teachers can do here is to praise the effort, the strategies or creativity used, and the progress made rather than labelling the child. Let me give you an example. I can see you worked hard on this rather than you're so smart. Make overcoming challenges and putting things right fun with the children. And of course, you can model that for them by the way you behave when things don't go right. We all have the ability to do those things regardless of whether it was the way for us as youngsters. My mother certainly wasn't that way with me when I was trying to learn how to play the piano. But ironically, it helped me to understand that there must be a better way. And when it comes to creating an environment conducive to growth, understand what each child needs and wherever possible, cater to that. For instance, my lovely niece, who teaches 10-year-olds, created a quiet table in her classroom, not as a punishment table, but as a space for those who learn and do their best work quietly. I would have spent a lot of my time on that table. How about you? Number 3. The last of my thoughts is about the importance of building psychological safety. This is about helping all children know that they have a place, so they build a felt and cognitive sense of belonging. This is the foundation level of Timothy R. Clark's psychological safety model. So the earlier our children can feel the sense of belonging, the more secure and confident they will feel. This in turn stops the othering and provides a community in which they can thrive and flourish. My ambition is that through my work and that of the growing number of introvert allies and advocates, that our quieter young people know that they are enough and value people's differences without seeing them as a threat or a fault. We can each do this in our own small or not so small way. So let's turn our thoughts to some actionable strategies. Firstly, let's ensure that we develop and deliver truly inclusive programs, initiatives and environments regardless of whether DEI is banned or not. What you may not know is that the positive rebel in me is delighting in the knowledge that more often than not, when things are banned and forced to go underground, they become even stronger. Let's make it so in this case. Let's share and promote books, resources and courses that cater to introvert sensibilities. I do this with every course I deliver by not having the creeping death of introductions, but empowering people to decide when they want to share their own objectives. I've noticed that it immediately puts the more introverted participants at ease. Likewise, in school environments, allow the children more autonomy to choose who they work with and maybe even in what group size. Radical, I know, but just because something has always been done this way doesn't mean we should continue. Secondly, be a mentor, ally and advocate wherever you can. We each have our own opportunities, and the more we can share our experiences and how we develop authentically, the more we inspire our younger people with hope, ideas and strategies. Don't force interaction. Don't grill your quieter child the moment they get out of school. Spend more time noticing and remember to comment on effort rather than results. Thirdly, intentionally create play and workspaces that allow we quieter ones to do our best work. This is important both in physical and virtual spaces. It's never too early to start, as recognised by both Maria Montessori and Rudolf Steiner. We still have a lot to learn from their approaches to schooling and education, and some of their principles can be applied before the child even enters the formal education system. And don't compare introvert and extrovert siblings, or team members come to that. Each one is a unique being with their own strengths, and it's our job to understand their strengths so we enable their growth and development. I think in summary, I urge each and every one of you to do what you can. The development of our children into healthy, well-adjusted adults is not just the responsibility of their parents. As the African proverb goes, it takes a village to raise a child. And we are those villagers, but don't alienate yourself from the neighbours in your village. We don't have to live in their pockets, but it's very helpful to be able to support each other in meaningful ways. That might not be something you've done before, and that's okay. We are all work in progress. But if we want to give our young people the best chance in life, help them to feel secure, psychologically safe, and confident in their uniqueness. By empowering our young introverts, we're not just helping an individual, we are changing the world. One quiet soul, one class, one school, one home, one street, one community at a time. And for the sake of the well-being and success of future generations, it has to start today. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.